Hello, everyone. We're down to our chapter on workplace stress, and here's the first of a handful of videos talking about stress, giving you some statistics, covering some content and material. Hopefully, it will be helpful as always in getting you ready. Some of this material is found in our chapter. Some of it's some extra material, which I think needs to be covered, some statistics and numbers and things like that. So just bear with me as we go through this, all right? First of all, I want to tell you, and this is the truth, I have had the opportunity to talk to people in seminars about the concept of stress. And usually, when I do this, a lot of individuals look at me, and basically, the whole mentality is you don't need to tell me about stress. I know about stress. I understand stress. I know everything there is to know about stress. And so, basically, with this kind of thinking, they've got it all figured out. Stress is awful. Stress is terrible. Everything about stress is bad. It has no positive value. And life would be a lot better if there was no stress in it. I've heard that from people before. And the truth of the matter is, they're all wrong. They're all wrong. It is not the case. Not all stress is terrible. In fact, some stress is motivating, depending upon the type that it is. Some has positive value. All right, eustress versus distress. We'll talk about that in a later video. And you can't live a life free of stress. It's not possible, okay? It just isn't. I will say this, whenever you fill out a stress survey, or if you ever fill out a stress survey, I have done this before in seminars and groups and classrooms, and people turn around, and when you do that, it's sort of interesting because sometimes they're sharing the scores. Look, I got a score of 700, and someone else says, that's nothing. I got a score of 925. I'm making these numbers up. Someone else says, that's nothing. I got over 1,000. And then you get someone else who tells you, oh, I got 1,400. They're proud of their stress. They're proud of their stress scores. You should never be proud of your stress. You do not show it off like a trophy or ribbon. If you had the signs of cancer, weight loss and basically maybe bleeding blood in your when you cough and things like that, you would never turn around and look forward to a chest X-ray to find out that you have cancer. That would never happen. So why would you be proud of your stress? It is not something to be proud of. In fact, in some cultures, it's a sign that you're not in control of your own life. You're not controlling things very well. So you would do everything you could to get rid of stress. So let's talk about this. Why the concern? Why the concern? Why is it so gosh darn important to us in this regard? I'll give you some quick statistics here. It is basically estimated, let's see, Blue Cross Insurance did a survey where they asked people if they turned around and thought their job was stressful. And according to their survey, about 82%, that's 5 out of 6 workers questioned, said that stress was a very major factor in their work. Okay, so almost 90% said stress is a major factor in their work and what they do. That's extremely high. Okay, almost 90%. So it's something to keep in mind. Also, another quick statistic, it is estimated that 50% of the visits to the doctor by adults is for illnesses that are at least indirectly related to stressful events. Basically issues such as ulcers, cold, flu, things like that. Illnesses, it's estimated at least half are brought on by stress, okay, whatever they have in that regard. Each year, we estimate, and here's my last statistic, that estimated cost to cover 2 stress-related incidences, okay, each year. That's heart attacks and ulcers, the treatment of it and all that. This country, the United States, spends approximately $45 billion per year treating these things. And these things are pretty much brought on by stress. There can be a little heredity involved. There can be other factors, but a lot of it is stress. So be aware of those statistics. Stress has quite the influence on your work. It really, truly does. The effect on your job can be devastating in that regard. Tends to result in lower productivity. It tends to result in an inability to focus and concentrate. That happens a lot. People who turn around and are stressed do not tend to make rational decisions as well. They tend to make quick decisions just to alleviate the stress. Ask any person who's tried to buy a vehicle, and sometimes you get a salesperson that just pushes you and stresses you because they know that you're more inclined to accept their offer just to get them to stop badgering you in that regard. So, the effect it can have on your job in terms of efficiency, productivity, thinking things through well, it's multifaceted and none of it is good. In terms of your health, be aware of this. Stress has the capacity to wear down your immune system. It can have an impact upon your immune system. And in so doing, it can leave you more susceptible to illness. Okay, I'll explain here shortly why your immune system can be worn down through this and leave you more open to colds, flu, and if it's long term, ulcers and heart disease and things of that sort as well. Now, before we get into this, to understand or to deal with stress, you really got to understand it. You've got to understand what it is, and you've got to understand how it works. So let me turn around and talk about what is called the nature of stress. Okay? This is what is called the general adaptation syndrome. It was developed by a Canadian physiologist by the name of Dr. Hans Selye. Dr. Selye came up with a 3-step process to basically explain how our body responds to stressful situations. You will see there is an alarm phase, a resistance phase, and an exhaustion phase. And simply put, this normal level of resistance that you see there, the normal level of resistance, okay, is the normal level at which your body works. When a stressful event occurs, there's the initial shock that happens when a stressful event occurs. And when that happens, your body starts to take a dip in terms of the normal level that it works, at which point, then that's part of the alarm phase. Then it starts to increase, okay? The stress levels start to increase and your body starts to work harder, okay? Blood pressure goes up, body temperature goes up, adrenaline goes up, pulse goes up. You're going through what's called the resistance phase. You're going from alarm to resistance. Your system is increasing here to deal with the stressor. I liken it to traveling down the road and basically starting to go up a steep hill. And sometimes you hear your engine on your vehicle downshift and start to work harder because of gravity and stress and the stressors created pulling on it. So your engine works at the low level and then it turns around and it increases to this second phase, this resistance phase. And your body stays at this upper level to deal with the stress. And one of two things is going to happen. Either number one, the stressor is going to go away, or number two, the stress is going to be too much for your system, all right? And basically, you're going to run out of energy and you will go into the third phase, which is exhaustion, all right? So your system's going to stay at an elevated level for a very long time until it reaches the point that basically the stressor goes away or it just can't take it anymore. Most times, the body can handle it pretty well, the stressor goes away. This is when it gets interesting. As you enter into the third stage, the exhaustion phase, you'll notice that the red line starts down and your system starts to drop. Blood pressure comes down, body temperature comes down, adrenaline comes down. The stressor is over for the time being. And if you happen to notice that red line, it drops below the normal level of operation, normal level of resistance. When it does that, you are more susceptible to illness. Okay, you are more susceptible to illness, and that can and does happen when it drops below that normal level. There have been times that I have run into students who have been gone on fall break or spring break or Thanksgiving or some other time, and I ask them, "How was your break?" And once in a while, they'll tell me, "Terrible." And I go, "Why? Why is it so bad?" No sooner did my break begin, and I got sick. Well, what that tells me is that they have been running for possibly weeks at this elevated level, this phase 2 resistance level, day in and day out. And finally, they got to the point where they had a break. their body started to come down, and it just so happens that their body dropped below their normal level of working and makes them more open to illness. Probably grabbed a door handle or something and scratched their eye, rubbed their eye rather, and they got an illness and their body wasn't able to fight it off. Okay, that is the GAS. All right, that is why your body gets worn down. That is why it can be so gosh darn hard on us in that regard. Okay, so that exhaustion phase is a big, big part. All right. Now, in terms of the reactions to the general adaptation syndrome, there really are two different types, okay? There is what we call a high intensity short-term stressor. And high intensity short-term simply means that your stress level may go up dramatically. I mean, it may just go through the roof, but it may only stay that way for several minutes, maybe an hour, and then it comes crashing back down. Okay, imagine if your system just shot way up, and then when the stressor ends, it comes down. We see this in law enforcement. We see this in firefighters. You know, one moment they're sitting relaxing, the next moment they're running into a burning building. Okay, trying to desperately find someone who's in there amongst the flames. When they get out, they pulled the person out, they are just physically exhausted. All right. And it's not because of poor health. It's just their body is run down. Same with law enforcement. They go chasing after a bad guy and basically catch that individual and they're just exhausted. Not because they're out of shape, but because their system is very high intensity, you know, for a short period of time. That is not the norm. What is the norm is this right here. And that is this state where people turn around and the intensity is not very high. It tends to be lower, okay? But it's very long duration, days, weeks, months, all right? You can get an individual whose stress level is above the norm. It's not astronomically above the norm, but in their daily job, their stress level is up, and it's like that 40 hours a week for 50 weeks a year. And so finally what happens is, while it doesn't go up high, it comes up to a certain level above the norm, and then when they finally get that vacation, that time off, their system drops, they go through exhaustion, and they are more susceptible to illness. Nothing like starting a vacation and getting sick. That's what some of that is. All right, folks, hope that begins to explain some of this stuff. We'll have some more videos. Take care.